بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد سيد البشر وآله وصحبه وسلم أجمعين ومن والاه ومن لم يوالي الرسول إما أن يخرج أو يصمت. This is used for only information purposes and explaining my book here. That's Al-Quran versus People, which is Al-Quran يتحدى الناس, and it's still defying everybody. Moving on from the first contact between the Western world and Islam, which was basically 1,300 years ago. You'd have to remember Sayyidina Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam when he passed in 611 AD. 711 AD, the Muslims were in Spain, and Islamic Spain basically was established from there onwards. But then, how does Islam appear to the West by country? When you ask them about Islam, they'll only think of Saudi Arabia. It's the only country that has the kalima shahada, la ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. It's green. There's a sword there. Human rights record to Saudi Arabia is terrible. It's absolutely terrible. Oh, Muslim, terrible. So now, number 5, page 35. I'll start on Saudi Arabia. Basically, if it went for the oil, Saudi Arabia would have been just a very small country, just like any country in Africa. It would have only shown on National Geographic every now and then, people going and taking photos. There's a goat there, there's a Bedouin, thank you very much, goodbye. But Saudi Arabia is different. Saudi Arabia makes $1 billion a day. Isnad Sahih from Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the President of the United States of America. Why would he lie? He told us they make $1 billion a day. So that's a lot of money. They buy $500 billion worth of weapons. Where does that weapon? I don't know. In the eastern province, oil was discovered, and Saudi Arabia basically became one of the richest countries. Not the richest country in the world, but one of the richest countries in the world. And everybody says, Qarn al-Shaitan. Maybe Qarn al-Shaitan is oil, man. Who knows? Rasulullah ﷺ has a lot of meanings in his hadith al-Sharifa sallallahu alayhi wasallam. The majority of the country, quarter of the country of Saudi Arabia is basically Rub' al-Khali, which is the empty quarter, which is all sand dunes. It's actually an ocean of sands. The Arab Revolt moved the Hashemites from Al-Hijaz, which is the eastern province, to north, and fate played very well with the Al Saud. They revived the Al-Wahhabiyya. People say if it went for Wahhabiyya, Al Saud wouldn't have survived. No, that's rubbish. If it went for Al Saud, Al-Wahhabiyya wouldn't actually survive. And I'm still saying it until today. Why are they isolated from all the Muslim world? It's because of one thing. If Saudi Arabia restores المذهب الشافعي in العقيدة, and المذهب الحنفي, be very careful, المذهب الحنفي is treated as a kafir madhab with the Ghulat al-Hanabila and the Wahhabiyya. They don't like Sayyidina Abu Hanifa al-Nu'man. But if they do restore al-Shafi'i في العقائد, which is in creed, and dedicate themselves to Abu Hanifa, the Madrasat Abu Hanifa al-Nu'man, the whole world would stand by them shoulder to shoulder. But in fact, that's not going to happen. And recently, unfortunately, they said Al-Wahhabiyya laysu min ahli sunnah wal jama'ah. So that's going to be a problem now. Abdul Aziz Al Saud rahimahullah, he took the Ikhwan from Al-Artawiyya, gave them weapons, restored the faith of Al-Wahhabi, Madhhab Al-Wahhabi. We say Madhhab Al-Wahhabi. Took Najd, became the Sultan, and after that he fought the Hashemite, and he took Al-Hijaz, and he basically, they claim they've destroyed the innovation, Al-Bid'ah, that we as Muslims, we were worshipping Qabr al-Rasul wal-'iyadhu billah. Nobody says that. Nobody ever said that. And Hadith al-Rasul is very clear. Al-Shaytanu ya'is. The Satan is in despair. Nobody denies that hadith. Rasulullah said that Al-Shaytan ya'is, he is now in despair, and he's desperate, and he knows that in the Arabian Peninsula only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be worshipped. So there you go. You can't go to a Muslim and tell him you're a kafir. Rasulullah said we are not kafara, we are Muslimin. لا تكفر مسلما. الشيخ الإسفرايني رحمه الله said لا نكفر إلا من كفرنا. If you say I'm a kafir, you're a kafir. 1932, Saudi Arabia became a kingdom. Whether in books, media, or whatever, everything that reaches the West is considered Islam from Saudi Arabia. Al-Madhab al-Wahhabi, the Wahhabis believe that after the four Imams, Islam fell onto Sayyidina Ahmad bin Hanbal, and then after that Ibn Taymiyyah. And from Ibn Taymiyyah, Muhammad Abdul Wahhab. And that's wrong. You've basically abrogated all the other madhahib, and that doesn't happen that way. This is what's upsetting the Muslim world. The British were a bit cautious to support Abdulaziz Al Saud, especially the British in India. They thought if Al-Madhab al-Wahhabi dominated, they had about 80. Today there's 200 million Muslims in India. There used to be 80 million Muslims in India. That's a huge number. So they said those people might actually object to Al-Madhab al-Wahhabi being taken over in Saudi Arabia. But fortunately, the people basically approved because they didn't have anything in their own hands. The kingdom was made. They were welcome to go, although we are welcome by the Saudi government to go for Hajj. Some I spoke to, extreme Wahhabis, they treat us as mushrikeen. And this is something not, لا تكفر مسلما. After the discovery of oil, basically it was a debate. How did Saudi Arabia basically look to the world? Saudi Arabia looks everything through the Quran. So they've restored Quran and Sunnah. According to they say we restored Al-Quran wa Hadith Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Took Abdulaziz Al Saud time to convince the ulama to actually accept the radio. But when they got their cars, they've accepted their cars. Subhanallah. I want my car, but I don't want a radio. Why don't you want a radio? The Sawt al-Shaitan. It's the voice of the devil or evil. So we had to get a muqri to read the Quran on one side and use another radio on somewhere else to prove to the Mufti. So it was a challenge for Abdulaziz Saud to convince those Wahhabis for modernization. It was also a struggle. You have to understand. Those people took the Quran literally. For the past 1,400 years, we've never faced any problems until those people came up from the desert and started basically taking the Quran how they understand it. Just like what we have here in the West. We have people who are going into Islam and they read the translations. No, I don't think so. That Rasulullah said this. He didn't mean that. Yes, Habibi, mashallah. How do you know? We've been Muslims for the past 1,400 years. Even Hamza Yusuf, when he says he was asked in London, what would they do with the atomic bombs? They'll use it against each other. Is this what you think of the Arab? Wherever they can get an opportunity to degrade the Arab, they would. Like he thinks that we're savages, Iran is savages, they're still Muslimin. No one is going to give artificial intelligence. I'll talk about artificial intelligence in future. And people think that China would give their weapons of mass destruction to the artificial intelligence. That's rubbish. That's rubbish. Nobody does this. We're not going to have an artificial intelligence computer to say, excuse me, what's the fatwa of such and such, and then look into it. It doesn't happen that way. We're still human. And every time he concentrates on how Arab have become so fusuq, the women are naked he gets a hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They're naked in the bazaars, the al-afkhaz, the thighs are showing, they're naked, whatever. Are you an Arab should actually stand to this guy and say, dude, are you here to look at our women? What happened to Ghuddul Absar? You see something of munkar over there, turn your face to the other side. We have a lot of people criticizing Arab, and Bilal Phillips and Abdurrahman Agli, all of those, the sons of Wahhabis, are coming up with those extreme ideas. They even have takfir for the people of Najd. Najd is the al-Wahhabiyya, the mother of Wahhabis, and they have takfir for them too. We call them the Neo-Western Salaf. In Daesh, you'll have to understand, if it went for Al Saud to tighten up, I'm not paid by Al Saud, I'm just telling you what history tells us. if it went for them to tighten up the Wahhabis, we would have been dire straits. You remember Prince Faisal, King Faisal, when he was a prince with Muhammad Busharrin. Muhammad Busharrin, I like his life story. I was wondering, why didn't he become a king? He would have actually tightened up more on those Wahhabis. But they gunned down the Wahhabis near the borders of Kuwait because they were actually going to go and occupy Kuwait, and they actually made a revolution. There was a revolt against Abdulaziz Al Saud where he sent his children to actually cut them down. So they were going to take the world. They've destroyed in Karbala. This is the third Saudi kingdom. In the first or second Saudi kingdom, they've destroyed even shrines in Karbala. They reached Amman, Jordan. They had a lot of wrath. They also have a battle near Damascus. Wallah al-Musta'an. At the very end, you'll have to understand that the media always looks at Saudi Arabia and they grasp any opportunity of woman wants to drive. There's no disco. Oh, people cannot go topless on the beaches in Saudi. They grab all of these trivial things and say, "Oh, Saudi Arabia is extremist, extremist. Yeah, we have to destroy that Islam to make them open and all this." So Saudi Arabia is not open, and everything goes through the Quran and Sunnah, and their Wahhabis basically are very strict. Man ghalla fi dunuh. There's also a hadith even in the Quran. You cannot have ghul fi din. You can't actually be very strict. فالدين غلبه. The religion will come against you if you actually have that kind of strictness. Robert Lacey is the official biographer for Al Saud. If you read his book, The Kingdom, it's very famous, it's very well known. Everything is detailed in it about how the power struggle became between Abdulaziz Al Saud or Al Saud and Al Rashid. There is Zaki Yamani, who was a minister. People actually condemn him too. I condemn him because he likes Muhammad Asad, who said, oh, he had a beautiful thesis about how al-hijab is not muthbat. Okay, dude, I don't know what the heck he's talking about. Al-hijab muthbat. Al-hijab is fard muthbat. Muthbatat you can't change. But he said, well, Muhammad Asad wrote. Muhammad Asad can write for him also. He can write a fairy tale story. I don't care about him. May Yamani is his daughter. She's always in debate with Robert Lacey. They used to have debates on YouTube. Today they've gone very slow. I don't know why. Maybe because of the new events that basically had unfolded between Saudi Arabia and the world. But still, Saudi Arabia is condemned 90% of its time just because of it being Muslim, not being Wahhabi or whatever. People are also encouraged to condemn. It doesn't matter whether it's just like we're condemning Iran because of them being Shia, or just because Iran is not. You see, this is the calamity of the situation. And Saudi Arabia is very well known of having takfir for the Shia. We don't have takfir for Shia. Shia is a different sect. I'll never become a Shia. I don't want to be a Shia. I don't want to be. We can't not associate with them. Shia and Sunni were together for the past 1,400 years. Everybody has his own method. So I can't condemn a Shia because, yes, he is not from Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, but it doesn't mean that I'll have to take a gun and shoot him, man. The fatwas of Saudi Arabia, basically, even the fatwas of Saudi Arabia did not cross the border, besides a couple of fatwas that I actually remember about al-khuruj al-hakim. If you're in Saudi, it's haram. If you're outside of Saudi, you can do that. Daesh, why did Daesh go crazy? Although Daesh is a branch of al-Wahhabiyah. They didn't have a king to stop them, to hold them down, pin them down and say, this is what you do here and there. They didn't have a system. They went on Fatawa Ibn Uthaymeen and Ibn Taymiyyah and Al-Wahhabiyya, extreme Wahhabi. This is your face of extreme Wahhabi, of what happens if you cannot control it. Daesh is part of the Khawarij that you would face if things, yes, Allah, لا قدر الله, لا قدر things will happen. لا يسمح الله بهذا. May heavens forbid. Openness of different cultures. You'll have to understand Saudi Arabia. There was a statistic measure, sort of a measuring stick of between Saudi Arabia and Spain. Robert Lacey says Saudi Arabia translated within 30 years 33 books, while else Spain translated 333,000 books in a year. Saudi Arabia translated 33 in 30 years. So there's not much openness. So when Saudis come over here and they look at Melbourne or Sydney, they go, wow, wow, what is that? What is that? They have the tallest buildings, but still, they don't have that cultural feel. Um, Moving on from Saudi Arabia, we go to Afghanistan. What do they know about Afghanistan? They only see the Allahu Akbar and blowing up bombs. Afghanistan and the Mujahid were heroes. They were all heroes. They dedicated even Rambo for Afghanis as a present. Like, this is how much we love you guys, and Mujahideen. Why? Because you're fighting the Russians. They also dedicated the living daylights for James Bond, Timothy Dalton, also in Afghanistan. Afghanis were the heroes before September 11th. And before September 11th, the Mujahideen were basically enthusiasts with the talk of Abdullah Azzam. He was a Palestinian, a very extreme, let's say, Wahhabi Palestinian who only promoted the ideas of Ibn Taymiyyah. He said even women and children should all go for jihad. The jihad was given a green light because we were fighting the Russian. So people who went there fighting jihad, they weren't fighting jihad. We were fighting Russia, dude. And after September 11th, basically, Afghanistan was condemned. When they wanted to, the whole world wanted to sanction Afghanistan. Afghanistan didn't have any oil like Iraq. They only had opium, and opium, 90% of opium, I've been told, well, you can read from the newspapers. I don't know how much the percentage was, like 12.5 or 25% was supposed to be actually sold. Anyway, there's a lot of smuggling in Afghanistan, and the only international company that they could actually tighten up was actually their airways, and that didn't do anything. The Afghanis still live their life because they are basically, if you go to Afghanistan, I was told by someone from Afghani, he said, if you go to Afghanistan, you'll go back about 1,000 years in time. There's hardly anything there. I think they still have a dial-up internet. I'm not really sure. Abdullah Azzam, who was basically the teacher of Khalid Mish'al, Khalid Mish'al, the founder of Hamas in Kuwait. His ideas was given the green light. Try to imagine you've got from the 80s, 90s, about 20 odd years to 25 years, you're promoting the madhab of Ibn Taymiyyah. Shaykh al-Islam, they say. Well, our Shaykh al-Islam is Sayyidina ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, the one who basically had explanatory notes about 28 volumes of Sahih al-Bukhari. Our Shaykh al-Islam was also a Nawawi. Our Shaykh al-Islam, we are Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, that's a bit stretching the thing. Some people treat him Shaykh al-Islam, some people do not treat him Shaykh al-Islam. It's up to you. Afghanistan, basically, if you're too lazy to look into the archives, I've seen some of Abdullah Azzam's videos. Thank God for freedom of information. Otherwise, Mein Kampf, the Quran, and Abdullah Azzam and all this would be forbidden. You won't be able to actually make your own research in the West. But the freedom of information gave us the opportunity to actually read all that. Just watch Tom Hanks' movie, Charlie Wilson's War, and it will give you a zest of how things were. It will give you a feel of how the Mujahideen were heroes those days. Of course, after the September 11th, everything went topsy-turvy, everything went upside down, and they started chasing the Afghanis everywhere. The West dedicated their life in destroying the Al-Qaeda machine. Unfortunately, what they did was they just got Kabul. Kabul is only a small village, man. And the rest of Afghanistan is still promoting in civil war. After that, the promotion of like blowing up a bomb in Kabul doesn't make the news anymore because that's it. People just moved on. So I'll finish this here, and later the next video will be talking about Egypt and Al-Azhar al-Sharif. This needs a good about 10 to 15 minutes in talking about what Egypt is, because Egypt is the actual beef. It's the actual base of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah in today's day and age. If it went for Egypt, Egypt restored Islam twice. Once during the Tatar and the Mongolians, and today with Al-Azhar al-Sharif. It's more than 1,000 years old, Al-Azhar al-Sharif. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wa mursalin sayyidina Muhammad sayyidina